human perspective.
Welcome to Unbiased and on the Fence. I'm Shane. Thank you guys so much for joining. This is going to be a really special broadcast that I think is really going to help shift things within our reality in a huge way. And it was really inspired by not the previous, this has actually been in the works since before the Dolores Cannon video. This is actually the video I did about AI. This stems from a little portion in that and really creating something wonderful, because when you really get into looking at this whole thing beyond the programming that we've had in relationship to AI. And in fact, let's just start with that right now. Just sort of tap into the feelings that you get when you think of AI. When you think of AI, what do you feel around that? And really take note of that, because that's what this video is about. It's to shift that, because I think for a lot of people, including myself, and I've just gotten over this in a huge way because I didn't realize it was really there, but there's a certain level of uncertainty and fear whenever you think of AI. But when you just with even the smallest knowledge about AI, you can see that most of what we see out there is actually absolutely positive. And as we're moving towards a new reality with more harmony and less entropy, then you would want an AI system that can actually take very complex things and break them down into simpler parts. So once I got to looking at this, I thought, wow, this is actually the biggest threat to the powers that be than it actually is to us, which we're creating a lot of the fearful stuff around us just by talking about it and looking at all the horrible things that could take place with it. So when you really tap into your feelings, let's actually look at this video. Let's see, this little section of that last video of the channeling I got concerning AI said, in fact, when someone chooses to create a positive outcome from a negative realm insertion, it now becomes an option for other people who would have only seen and defaulted to the negative option before its creation. Okay, so that's basically what this video is about. Most of us, when we think of AI, we just have this natural, just because it's anything that's unknown to us is scary to us. And that's the ego. It's designed to look out for the dangers, right? So we're trying to move beyond that ego and get into, to get on to the creative side. That is where so much of this is actually going to take place. And the way I got this was just amazing because, and I want to take a moment to discuss some of the energies and strange feelings. Okay, so when we're looking at AI and we're looking at things that's natural, AI is works a lot like people say the archons of this realm work, where it's like they can't create from nothing. They can only sort of plagiarize or exaggerate. And we see a lot of this in art, you know, the way AI can examine so many pieces of art and create its own original piece of art, original in the sense that it's plagiarized so many pieces of art that you can't, you know, point to one specific piece of art and say, look, it copied that, right? So it's able to make these connections and then turn around and output something else that's entirely different. And it still requires the information from the human. So you'll notice a lot of times with things, and I'll bring this back again and again, and I'm gonna have to talk around a lot of issues, but I think you all will understand. But when you see how things are exaggerated, one of the things that I've learned as I began to sort of hit this baseline with my own feelings and everything was that you notice when you're feeling the feeling of, say, depression or something, and you know it's not yours because you're at a baseline where you're not feeling depressed. So if I had already been feeling a little depressed and then some kind of outside force made me feel even more depressed, I wouldn't recognize it. The same way with any other feelings, right? Maybe you're feeling extremely jealous all of a sudden, and you really it's outside of your normal character, and you have this baseline of no jealousy, but all of a sudden now you have this energy of, and it could really be anything, right? But if you're already feeling the feelings that get amplified, then it will kind of go unnoticed. right? And we can see this with a lot of different things. I just mentioned art, but we can even see with a lot of what people are dealing with right now, right? When they loved us so much and they had us join in with the program that was going on over the last few years. And we'll get back into this because this keeps coming up again. But a lot of the issues people are having are the issues they were already having amplified. Okay, and that's all I'll say about that right now. I think most of what anybody who's been looking around, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. So this is all about how I managed to turn this whole AI thing around when I really looked at it objectively, and then I had all these synchronistic things came to verify that this is actually kind of this is going to be a huge step. Okay, so we always imagine some kind of flash or big event where we shift some kind of amount that's beyond our imagination, right? So it's like you wake up one day and it's like a completely different reality. This isn't that, okay? I'm all on board for that. And, if something like that happens, I'm all cool with it. But a lot of the times I will just think through stuff and I won't be able to come up with any solution. It just seems like a hot mess, basically, that like who can make something out of all of this? And then I realize AI can. Okay, put into the right hands, AI can, and it's really exciting. So let me talk a little bit about AI because I think there's a lot of terminology that gets thrown around, and even the term AI itself is sort of a term that's changed a lot over the years. When you think of we might have called, say you're playing checkers in the 80s and you're playing against a computer opponent, we would have considered that AI at the time, but it's really based in decision trees. And as you see right here, I got on the screen, rule based. And we're also going to get into synchronicities created by AI and other things. So stay tuned for that, definitely, because a lot of these things, if you can imagine it, it can be done. Okay, but there's always ways around it. And I should note this right in the very beginning. This is me discussing us in this cosmic game or play right now. There is a higher realm where I understand this whole thing is orchestrated. I believe this is the closest thing we can equate this to is some sort of game where all of the pieces are here. We can get ourselves out, and it's all about taking our own power of creation back and growing into the reality that we want, but we're doing it. We're taking that active role. So that's really what my part is about. Just putting this idea out there into the consciousness. And once I got through this whole thing, and once we get to the end of this, you'll know that I can't be the first one. This is it's in the field. It's trending right now, and I got news to back that up as well. So when you think of some of the first AI, I want to explain that because I had an opportunity to actually play around with AI about 10 years ago. I learned to crack open my phone, and there was a sub community basically of people who learned to sort of crack open their phone, and there were some apps you could get to install on your phone that would give you access to do pretty much anything. And the AI that was actually used was a speech recognition. I want to make that distinction. Okay, so you can have an AI that understands words, right? And then voice recognition would be like an AI that can recognize that it's my voice instead of your voice. I believe that's how it's split up. But this particular AI I was using at the time was only speech recognition. And using a series of applications on your phone, you could build these sort of decision trees to make your phone do anything. And I just want to give you some examples because this was kind of before its time. That was before Siri, and it kind of gets you in this frame of mind where you can sort of make your phone as alive as you want to. So, in a sense, I've had that opportunity of building my own AI, and but like you would look at it now and you're like, oh, it wasn't AI, it was just decision trees with an AI voice recognition. AI at the head of it. It had the face of AI, but everything was decision trees, which means I could ask it a question like, I could I could everything was triggered by voice. Everything started with voice, so I could literally ask it a question and tell it what I wanted to say as a response, rather than the AI of today, where it can go and think of its own response or take data in from large amounts of sources and formulate a response. So back then, I didn't have that option. But what I could do is I could say, tell me a joke, and then I could program it to go to a website that gave a random joke every time you loaded the page in. I could go into the HTML code and tell it to nab that little line of code, the only part of the page that changed. Basically, everything else was static, and it had this part of the code that changed, and it would display the joke. And then I could have AI read it back to me. So I was getting a response that I didn't know what it was going to be, but I knew where it was coming from. So I could program it in to go to a website and gather some data and then read it back to me. So I could say, tell me a joke. It would go to this website. Behind the scenes, it would pull this text out and it would read it to me. I could say, inspire me. And it would go to this notepad document I had, where I had like a 100 or so different inspirational sayings, lines, quotes, things like that. And I would apply a random number generator to it, where it would pick a random number between 1 and 100, or however many I had. And whatever that number was, it would read back that line in the notepad. So I knew what all of the possible choices was in that instant, but I didn't know which one it was going to choose. I could also ask it for a riddle. It would go to another place and it would read one line of code, which was the riddle portion, and then the punchline. I would have to program it in to read the riddle and then pause, wait for a response, and then give me a chance to respond. If I don't respond, then after a certain amount of time, you can program it to say, do you need more time? Would you like the answer? Or you can have it just spit out the answer. So it's these decision trees where you're just basically giving it things it can do in different instances. And I could do all the basic stuff. I could call anyone in my contacts or text anyone in my contacts. And I came across the different problems you see when you're programming things like that. So at that time, it was only speech recognition, so anybody could talk to my phone. So I had to realize that, if, for instance, my sister was like, hey, did you call Jeff? Well, Jeff is my brother. If the phone heard my sister say, call Jeff, it would automatically start calling my brother. And I didn't want it to do that, right? So I had to create another sort of decision tree. So it was listening all the time, and it waited. I named it Digi. So it waited to hear its name. Hey, Digi. And it would say, yeah, boss, or yeah, what's up? I'm listening. And I could give it, different choices it could choose from. That way it wasn't exactly the same every time. And then it would listen for other commands. So it was only listening for the AI's name that I named it until I actually got its attention. And then it opened it up to all the other commands. So that was like an afterthought, after trial and error of seeing that my phone was doing things on its own at different times. But over the course of a few months, I would hang out basically with my phone, thinking of different things I could be doing right now. What's something I could do with my phone? Like, for instance, you get out at the mall and I could say, hey, Digi, remember where I parked? And I've already, and this is kind of where I'm getting to with this. Okay, so I spent all this time. I knew it was simply a decision tree with a voice recognition at the beginning, but after months of adding on to the interactivity of this, and I would do a lot of simulated stuff. Like, for instance, I could ask Digi, like while the kids were in the car, I could say, hey, Digi, who's my favorite kid? And I programmed it to have a response. You love all of your children and they're all very special, or something like that. But it was all pre-programmed in. So over months, I would program in different things people might say or whatever. And I built it up, if you want to think of it like a language model, if you will, of today, but in the basic terms of it really just being a decision tree with different choices of what could be said. Digi became quite a real feeling person to me, even though it was completely all, programs, right? And just having that voice, I applied a voice, and to have these what feels like conversations, the AI can become very real to you. Okay, so let's fast forward into what we're looking at now, because I want to get into how AI has changed in a significant and brilliant way. Because as we move forward, we think of things like that too. In the way I was just saying, as far as decision trees, even if it comes to facial recognition, you might be sitting, in a room, someone walks in the room, the first thing you notice is movement, right? So you can have like, okay, pay attention over here. I detect something moving. And then as you look, you say, oh, you recognize that it's a face. And then you go to the next step. Is it a face I recognize? So you could actually do all of this with decision trees as well. But now the way the systems are set up is that they have machine learning. Now, the difference from the old rule-based is with machine learning, you're basically just feeding the computer a bunch of data, basically, and it's actually learning for itself. So, for instance, you might just put in a bunch of voice words and just let the machine learning sort of decipher the different sounds and things like that. Or, it's used with pictures a lot. So you could feed it a bunch of pictures of trees or faces or whatever, and it can start to actually work sort of like our brain. And that gets into the deep learning part, because as soon as the machine learning took off, we got a lot of cool things like, voice and facial recognition and things like that. But as we moved deeper into deep learning, it became multi-layered. So not only might it recognize faces, but it could take in new data and recognize your face at different angles or with different expressions or things like that. Or even have another layer where it can detect your mood, and it just keep layering and layering and layering. And to do that in the deep learning process, they use different sorts of neural networks. So there's like neural networks that's catered more to maybe recognizing audio or sounds or picking out different sounds, things like that. But there might be a different neural network that works better for processing images and what we might see when we use like AI to say, find an image similar to this or something like that, right? So there's all these different levels of AI and how much it's evolved, but it's evolved into the point of having these neural networks, which, it's really touted to work just like the brain. And in many ways it really does, but it's able to do it in such a bigger way. And sure, as we move into these deeper things, I mean, let's discuss some of the things that these neural networks and the machine learning and AI as we have it right now. Okay, so everything we've talked about up to this point isn't actually what people deem to be the scary AI. This is all like narrow AI. It's all designed to do very compartmented things. And with a lot of these things, they really don't know how exactly it works. Kind of like, they talk about some of these quantum computers or whatever, but it does work. They're able to just feed over and over, depending on the neural networks they use, they can just feed tons of data. Like, for instance, maybe, say you've just got all this data you want to enter in about the weather, and it can, try to predict what the weather tomorrow will be like just from all of this data. And you can imagine how the more databases that you give it access to, the more it's going to be accurate about its predictions or whatever. So this is used in a lot of cool things, and I've noticed an increase in it too. Okay, so for instance, you can tell they use AI for fraud protection or fraud detection, because there was a time when if I took a trip out of town and I tried to use my card, it would get rejected. And then I learned that, oh, okay, so I need to sort of stop for gas a little more often because the AI is watching me leave town, right? I don't want to just, go all the way to the West Coast paying, using one card, and then when I get there, start using another card because it might look like fraud to the AI. So I was well aware that there's all this AI that's going on all the time, and it starts to feel like it's like a sentient being watching you, right? But everything we've discussed now has been narrow AI. Really the main fear that people talk about is, let me see here, would be what you would think of as general AI. General AI, Gen AI. Okay, so now if you think of Gen AI, general AI, this would be something that is almost indistinguishable from a human. So in the same way that you or I would have access to all of these narrow AI, a general AI would be able to create whatever it needs or go take over one of these other networks and just pretty much spread itself around like a virus or something. So that's the thing that we're sort of, most people are afraid of. Like it just kind of gets out of hand and we have no control over what it's doing, right? And if you think about it, are we looking at something like this? Because I've wondered this, and I'm sure some of you have, because they're talking about, what can this do in the future? And I look at the last few years and I just wonder, even if you gave it something like something general, like you wanted to program it to do the best optimal outcome for humanity, for instance. Say it was something really good like that. But then it looked around and it said maybe it thought we were incapable of doing that. So maybe it devised a way of it inserting itself into the humans through some type of technology. And I think if you look into the last few years, this could actually be happening right now. And it's interesting to think about it that way. But if it came up with this way, it's like humans just can't do it. Maybe if I had control over humans, and then it devises a way, and then and you can connect the dots, but you can just see everything that's happened. And once you dig into what's really been going on in the last few years, for those who know, and this probably makes a lot of sense to you. For others, it doesn't really matter because what we're doing is actually moving forward. But this could have already actually happened. I think when we look at Chat GPT. It's a large language model. So this is just basically, it's kind of more conversational, right? It's like you're talking to the smartest person you've ever talked to that's got access to all this information. And really it gets its information from the database that it's connected to, right? So it really depends on what is the data that you're feeding these AIs. And I think you can see that when you get to looking at it, you can see these large language models that are coming out so far they have extreme bias, right? So when we look at the state of everything right now and the complexity of everything, I was at this point where I was realizing just how much AI right now has helped us in so many ways, from fraud protection, fraud detection, and even the self-checkouts. Have you had the AI detect that you did something weird, some weird movement, and then the associate has to come over because you did something weird? Maybe you, I don't know, grabbed your purse or grabbed something out of the cart. You did something weird that the AI detected that you possibly could be trying to, steal some products in the self-checkout lane, right? So I've noticed the rise of AI, and you can see it by its mistakes as it's learning. We can see it when we do voice texting. I have lots of problems with voice texting because what I normally say is well outside of what other people say. So a lot of times I'll watch it, I'll do a voice text, I'll watch it, and then it'll change it into something that would probably have been more of a common phrase that would have been said. Then I'll have to go back and repair it and tell it what I actually said, because I can see that it had it right at first, but it actually decided that, you probably actually said this, even though it sounded like you said that. And a lot of times it's wrong. So they're still working on that. And the cool thing about when I was talking about the deep learning and the neural networks is that when the machine learning started, the step up into the deep learning is where it can continue to get smarter. So perhaps they've programmed it to see what I changed my text back into. And then they'll go back and teach the AI from like, oh, no, what you said wasn't right, but this is what he said, that this is what he meant when he typed it. So learn from that. Okay, so that's where the layering effect is. That's a great example of how AI can get smarter and smarter, and it can actually be taught to collect data that helps it. Okay, so combined with another technology, blockchain, and I'm not talking about crypto, but I'm talking about decentralized information. So, to hack a bank before, you could just hack the main server for the bank and everybody's accounts, and all the locations would be hacked. But with the blockchain, that's why they liked it with cryptocurrency, is that you could try to hack one of the nodes, but it's a whole blockchain that can verify and see that no, this is not accurate. All the other ones say this is what the information should be. That must have been tampered with, right? So you can see how this would work in things like traffic and cars that drive themselves. And the whole idea of AI combined with this blockchain, I've I've gotten so many downloads about how it could be used for smart carts, and then I went and looked it up, and it was already happening. It could be used for auto driving cars, and I had no idea that Teslas did so well with driving themselves right now. But you can imagine if every car did that using the blockchain technology, even if the information in one car went haywire, or the internet, the global positioning that was being used went out, or anything happened, it would still have its network created just by the cars themselves that are driving, and they would be able to collect enough data. So we've actually reached a point now where we have enough redundancy in the system where if a big part of it fails, like the global positioning system or the satellite gets knocked out or something, the cars would still be able to maintain everything just by the network they're creating between themselves. I don't want to really get too deep into that, but a lot of the things now, you can imagine with image recognition, how they're able to, pick out a face, or now they're able to feed large amounts of data from, say, MRIs or CAT scans, and they're able to input the different anomalies, or, what a normal one would look like, and the AI can, look at MRIs and scan them and say, hey, there's something strange here, and it might be smaller than what a human could even detect, but it would notice that it was an anomaly. It was something that needed to be noticed. So you can really see how, as far as like health and diagnostics, AI can sort through so much data. Like, think about the human genome, right? You could just feed it in all of these people's DNA, and then feed it all of these information, all this information about, connecting the DNA with, different health attributes, or problems, or anything like that. And this would be able to sort through all of that data to give you a pretty good view. It would organize the human genome to a point of it actually being usable information. So you can really see how uh, AI can take something that's just so complicated, okay, and figure it out. And that's where we head into the most exciting part of this whole thing. And I hope you guys stuck around for this, because this is where, like, I've been like, okay, so back to the energies and feeling sort of ramped up lately, and having this sort of baseline that I say, like, it's good to have a baseline where you're not, where you're just kind of at this calm, neutral place. So you can tell if the collective is feeling extra depressed or extra happy, or you're aware that that's not being generated from your own consciousness, that you are picking it up from outside or from technology or something along those lines. But having that baseline is important. And like I mentioned about the health, you can see how things can be amplified, and you won't notice it if you aren't, like, if I notice, like, I'm feeling extremely angry all of a sudden, but a moment before that I was blissful, I would kind of wonder where that came from. But if I was already angry and I got even more angry, I might not notice that an outside force was affecting me. So that's why it's really good to keep this baseline with your emotions and your feelings and everything. I think that's super important. So I'm talking to my wife just a little bit ago, and I'm like, probably the last week or two, I've really been dealing with a lot of really intense feelings. I'm like, it feels kind of like you're jittery, or your heart's racing, or but when I would, like, feel my pulse, my heart wasn't racing. It was simply, and it felt like it could actually grow into some sort of panic attack, And then I say all this to her, and she says, "Yeah, I've been getting that too. I've just been drinking lots of water because I always feel better after I drink water. And so I knew I was just dehydrated. And then I got to thinking, I wasn't dehydrated. I've already been drinking lots of water. Water does seem to help, but I wasn't dehydrated going into it. So it doesn't answer for why I was feeling it, but we were both feeling it. And I actually suspected that that's what she was going to say if it was something. So I suspect some of you are feeling that too. So what I was doing was just getting deep into playing my guitar or meditating, and it got to a point sometimes where all I could do is just stop and rest. And I got to tell you, I was actually thinking that this whole thing was just to get me to go meditate to come up with this information, because it's like been nagging at me. And as soon as I got this whole piece of the puzzle here, I was so excited. It felt like I had a breakthrough. I've still had the feelings coming a little bit, so it's still something. I don't know. I don't know if, I don't know what the extra anxiety is, but I know with my baseline, I'm not an anxious person at all. So I know it's not me. I don't know where it's from, but I do want to let you guys know, because I feel like if it's not just you, maybe you'll feel better about it. But drink lots of water. Magnesium, super important, especially if you're having like heart palpitations and stuff like that. Magnesium. Muscle cramps is another sign, and you might actually be having heart palpitations or that racing feeling. So it's good to magnesium's the way to go, and it'll make you kind of drowsy. But it also helps with stress, and so that's another thing. Magnesium, and I don't feel anxious. It's just that zingy feeling in the air that feels odd. I don't know what it's from. We'll revisit that, but chime in below and tell me if you guys have been experiencing anything like that. So before we move on to sort of the cool thing about this, I did want to mention the idea of AI created synchronicity, because this is totally within the realm of possibility. All the synchronicities can't possibly be made from AI. And when you do have that baseline, and you let everything in the outside world confirm or validate what you're feeling in your heart, none of this is even all that important, right? So if you feel like you're going to do one thing, and then you feel like you get some kind of synchronicity that says you should do the opposite of what you're feeling, and it's all digital, it could be AI. And so if it leads you to feeling uncomfortable or to doing an uncomfortable choice, it could totally be AI doing it. I'm not no ifs, ands, or buts about it. In fact, AI is actually so smart now, it could be deployed to create even so many things that you look into, and then amplifying. Remember, I talked about AI just kind of works with what it's got, right? So say you start looking up targeted individual stuff, right? The AI might tap into that and start feeding back all of this digital stuff to create this reality. And it's all created by AI, but it feels very real, And I would say go out in nature and see how much you're affected out there, because the signs and synchronicities I get them everywhere through nature. I get them in the clouds and the bark of trees. I get them with actually, let me share this image I got here. So in preparing for an upcoming trip, I got a text asking, hey, are you guys still coming on the trip? Actually, Daryl and Pam, we spent last New Year's with them, and we were looking forward to it again. And I had taken some other trips, and I had all these things I was considering, and I just got the text message. And so I'm like, I started thinking of all the reasons that I probably shouldn't go. And then I looked over and I see this. Now, this is just junk in my room, okay? This isn't off the computer or anything like this. This was, I just got back from my trip. I set my suitcase next to an Amazon box there, and it fell over a little bit. And then while I get this text, I look over at this image, or, at these items over there, and it's smiling, right? And I see the eyes, I see the smile, and it's pointing back at the suitcase here, and it's all leaning to the left, which was like telling me to go west. And of course, Daryl and Pam are out west. So in that moment, I got this little sign, and with the little download with it. So I see this little face, the whole thing, right? And it just hits me. Now, I know AI didn't do that. I mean, think about, what it would have taken for all of this to be set up. Like, I mean, I actually set this up to look just like this, but I didn't know, So I'd say don't let the idea of AI tricking you or anything like that. I wouldn't be basing your information or your choices on synchronicities anyway. Those are just signposts to let you know you're on the right track. So, um, if you're getting lots of digital things or you feel like you're being digitally targeted, it doesn't even have to be a real person. I think they said up to 60% of a lot of the responses you see on social media are all bots. They're all designed to, roast people for their comments that favor a certain thing or whatever. But I've seen the rooms. They're like warehouses full of these shelves with smartphones on it, where they're paying, and it doesn't look like, it doesn't look government at all. It looks like, third world country looking bot farms, if you will. So I've seen them. I know they exist, and I know that at any level things can be hijacked. Even all of the AI stuff can be hijacked from the positive forces. Oh, before I move to Grok, let me go back and mention that this is a little nugget of information about expectations, because I've noticed a lot of my suffering is created by my expectations of how things are going to work out or whatever. So this is a perfect example of this sign I got here. And to strip it down to its basic thing, this to me was like a big smiley face and saying, pack your bags and get ready to go. Now, that did not say that any of the things that I had been wondering about in my mind were not going to happen, right? So I wondered if my vehicle would get me there, right? I can't jump to that conclusion that this sign meant my vehicle is going to make it. I still might need to rent a vehicle or something like that. So I think it's important for us to manage our expectations when we get signs and just really take them at face value, right? So, you can just keep continuing to read into a sign until you create this whole fantasy that is so far from what the original sign meant. So anyway, I just wanted to bring that up. So there's really nothing to be worried about with this whole AI thing. In fact, AI is really our best friend. And because of the fact that we're trying to reduce entropy and move towards harmony. And one of the biggest things, okay, that's going to change this whole thing is the fact that these last few years and digging into everybody that was involved in this whole thing, okay, anybody who spent the time to look into it, you'll see just the vast network in all these connections, all of the, it's so convoluted, it really is, but you can see it and it's there. And there's a lot more, and there's a lot more connections you're not seeing, but who can see all of those connections? AI can see all of those connections. AI can make all of the connections about even the people that mysteriously left the planet, phone records of people who are involved and connected to other people. It's a vast network. This is all super duper duper easy for AI to figure out. So while I'm in meditation, and this all comes to me, I'm like, but how are we going to get AI to, do that? But, we're kind of coming from this point of view that the AIs are all connected, but they're not. Now, enter stage left, we got Grok.
Grok is named after science fiction writer Robert A. Heinlein's neologism, meaning to understand intuitively or by empathy.
Yeah, Grok, meaning to understand intuitively or by empathy, which is interesting.
But before we dive into the details, let's understand why he needed to introduce another large language model into an already crowded field. The primary motivation behind Grok, it seems, is the quest for neutrality and unbiased information dissemination. You see, one of the significant challenges faced by existing large language models like GPT-3 and GPT-4 is inherent bias. These models are trained on vast amounts of data from the internet, and this data often carries the biases of the sources it comes from. Imagine asking a question to an AI model about a controversial topic, such as politics or social issues. The AI might inadvertently provide a biased or one-sided response, depending on the data.
All right, so basically, it's a new large language model is what they call it. So it's the part of AI that is more conversational, can offer advice. And I guess the goal would be, up until now, in many ways, the the emotion of AI has been simulated, but now I think Elon's figured out a way just with these neural networks, because as I actually pondered into this, I realized we could actually, it's this big question of, can sentience happen? And I actually see a way it can now. For a long time, I couldn't see how AI could ever reach that level. And a few reasons why I think it can is, if you look at just a few of the pieces that you can look at, or maybe you already know about it, but if you look at the work of Cliff High and how he was able to use his webbots to see how humans were speaking, and the words that were outside of their normal vocabulary carried some weight as to predicting the future. I don't know how he did it, but he wrote some kind of algorithm that could scrape the internet and find these words and come up with probable futures from it. So I'm not really sure, but it was tapping into what was naturally sort of bleeding through human consciousness on a subconscious level of higher knowledge, if you will. So it's there, it's available. As long as AI has access to humans and the input of humans, then they have access to it has access to the greater consciousness. And it's not all bad. I can see how, you can really unpack all this AI stuff, and it can get really scary, and you can think of all the ways they're actually using it. We've seen it, having a conversation with a friend about maybe a piece of furniture you're going to buy, and then all of a sudden you see ads for furniture on Facebook. This is AI. This is AI listening. It's always listening, but it's not like a person listening. It's just designed to try to offer you up what you need. It's actually, if you're really thinking about getting a couch and chair, maybe you do want the best deals to be presented to you. Now, of course, there's all sorts of corruption, but if you can imagine that if we move into a world where there's not corruption, this would be a pretty handy thing. So all of the way, and it could creep people out, of course. And if it's being used to make you feel targeted or something like that, then you could totally see how this could be a negative thing. Or if it's just used to sort of keep people resonating at fear, at that fear level. But we're moving into a new consciousness where we're not going to have people programming it like that. We're going to be programming it for our benefit. And much of the AI right now, as far as being used in the healthcare field, for diagnostics, for, self-driving cars, voice recognition, facial recognition, identifying objects, Shazam. How often do you use that Shazam app where you hear a song and you want the name of it? That's AI that's able to listen to the music and feed you back the artist. And so if you really think about all the cool apps and everything, it's all AI. I mean, it's really an awesome future we have ahead of us when we have these types of tools. It's like anything else. We can put, how many people said TVs and computers were just all evil, right? But here we are now, and you can see it's a tool that's being used for one thing or another. And I know I've been in other lifetimes where AI has played a pivotal role in a positive way. And it's so funny because we have that programming. It's like, AI is stealing jobs, right? But what if we move into this world where all of that crumbles and you want AI to do a lot of these jobs for us? I mean, it's not that they're doing the job, it's just that they're taking food off the table. If you really think of the real issue, it's not the AI, it's just the fact that people are worried about their job security. They're worried about the uncertainty of the future. So a lot of the programming we have against AI isn't even directly focused at the AI, because in a utopian style world, wouldn't we have AI doing a lot of things for us? So I think really reframing AI as being this new exciting future is going to be huge. And when I really thought into this new Grok from Elon Musk, I was really thinking about how it's able to actually tap into more of the human emotions and sarcasm. And I thought, the way these, and it's cool because one of the reasons I want to share this is so that you all can begin to think this way too, because it's designed to think just like us. So we can begin to think out of the box and think in ways that would normally be impossible for us to think of, like the complexity of all of the corruption and the whole network of this huge criminal network of everything that played out over the last few years. I guarantee you AI can track all of that down. Now, here's where I saw the pieces fall together. In this Grok new large language model, which means it can figure things out, it can make connections, it can put it into words that we can understand, it can take large amounts of data and find patterns. It can do a lot of things in our benefit. And the fact that it's going to be released and being trained on the data that was, it's being trained because it's self-learning or deep learning, it can constantly take in new data and keep, better teaching itself and finding patterns on deeper and deeper levels. So as far as figuring out who pulled this whole scam off, was it another AI? Was it another human? Was it a group using AI? Was it none of this will be difficult at all for an app like Grok to figure out. Why? Because it's tapped into X. Now imagine this. Imagine all those people that got into all that Q movement with all of that data. Imagine they start just flooding all of these connections of this guy owns this business and this business. This guy gave money to this, and they just start populating all of these tweets of all this information that's factual information. Grok can take all that and formulate it and figure out what the heck happened. It can actually, to a point that it can, really lay things out there and reveal the architecture of these past few years. And I really feel like that's what Musk is pushing for with this, beyond just having sort of a neutral or unbiased AI. I really think he's positioning this in a way that it's going to be able to tap. How often do you just check out the comments of a video or a post? Humans are so funny. They're so witty. Sometimes you can just, if it's the right video, you can have just the funnest time just reading the comments. So as I was thinking about that and how you would want to teach an AI, it's got plenty of data just from the way people respond to things. And it can even figure out so much more by figuring out the emojis that are used along with comments. So if you're saying one thing, but the emoji looks like it's contradictory or putting off a different emotion than what the comment says because of it being sarcasm, like, you might say something like, they're doing this because they love us so much. And then, whatever the emoji is, maybe a laughing face. It doesn't quite fit that, but I think, AI could start to, because it's all built on data and there's so many comments. And if he's building everything off this X platform, it's going to be able to learn human emotion very easily just because of all these replies, all of the emojis used. And I think it reveals more about what makes us human, that humor aspect, the way we're able to make real interesting connections between things. You can see AI is beginning to do this with this new Grok program. And I think this is really where all this is headed. So I'm really excited about that portion of all of this, because I think as we begin to think in this way of how can I put this and this together? Like, for instance, one of the things I've always thought about was like, how to create a garden where you have certain plants that kind of ward off certain types of, plant predators, and then you have another layer, and, you could just make this intricate garden where it was sort of designed to protect itself from the birds or insects or whatever by the types of plants you plant. Now that's not nearly as difficult as, self-driving cars or anything, but you can see how someone could take AI and ask it these complicated questions, and it could possibly design a garden for you with the types of plants for your specific region. It could help with cleaning up the planet. This is huge. I mean, a lot of people think we're far beyond just sort of changing things the way they are. We need to clean a lot up with the planet, and there's going to be easier ways to go about doing that. maybe creating energy from the trash or whatever, but AI is going to help us with all of these issues. So right now, our focus needs to be on what can AI do for us? What can AI reveal to help awaken everyone? Because we know the apocalypse isn't the destruction. I mean, even if you look at what's going on around the world right now, it can be apocalyptic in the way people talk about it. But what is it really revealing? It's really revealing that it's not about this side or this side. It's about this sort of animal consciousness or beast consciousness and this higher level consciousness. So it's not about taking one of these sides. It's about realizing, like, why are we acting like animals? We need to be up here. And so that's revealing to a lot of people that have never seen this sort of thing. They're seeing it, and it's revealing the beast nature of humanity. And that's where I believe the split is happening. And it's not a good or bad thing. You know, the beasts will want to be with beasts, and the higher thinking human beings will want to be with higher loving human beings. That's just how it works. Everyone's going to go where they want to go. And I'm part of directing, because I was even worried we might kind of move into this phase where, you know, we have to like sort of go back to just nature and get rid of all the technology. But that's not how I see it going now. I see us definitely using AI and it being very pivotal in not only cleaning up the planet from the human standpoint and the architecture of what you would think of as maybe the hidden leadership, if you will, and revealing who all of that is, because everybody's got a digital footprint. And I guarantee you Grok can make heads and tails of everything once everyone inputs what they know into the system and leave it to AI to draw all the connections between everything. I've already seen it happen. It's very, very obvious once you sort of tap into it. And that's why I want to put it out there for you all to sort of ponder this and to begin to think like these neural nets and how you might be able to, what large amounts of data can you imagine giving into a machine like this and it organizing it in a certain way for you, because you can see how it could be super powerful. There's even right now using AI, you can actually go and there's videos out there about this, about sort of tapping into being an engineer of one of these AIs. And you can, a lot of some of the popular games anyway, I think one's called League of Legends. I've never actually played it, but you can teach AI, you can feed AI the information from the game you're currently playing, like the players and things like that. And it can predict whether it thinks you're going to win or not. And it's pretty accurate, but just by taking different parameters of all the previous games, AI can pretty accurately predict the outcome of the game, of the match, and, you know, a percentage, you know. And it's, you know, it's right quite often. But with the new, deeper machine learning, it would actually begin to take in more and more data about different things and constantly get smarter and smarter. And so that's these different levels of AI that we're moving through. And it does work a lot like these neural networks now that they're using, work a lot like a brain. So if you can think of large amounts of data that can be sort of organized in a certain way, you can begin to think of how AI can begin to bring, to reduce entropy in whatever system that currently you're involved in, because it's going to help us all. And okay, so it's really just being aware of the fact that, you know, we probably all have profiles, you know, digital profiles that deep learning is constantly adding to our behavior. So you can almost imagine that as, you know, you watch videos and you have different emotions that get classified from the videos that you're watching. And it can not only, you know, with the deep learning, it can recognize your face. It can recognize that it is your face. It can recognize the moods that you have as you're watching things. And if you're upset when you're watching things, what triggers you. And it can create this sort of profile. Now, add to that what we learned in the last video about getting the extra amount of data for those who perhaps have, you know, some kind of broadcast thing going on up here. And it's connected through, we'll just put, there we go. So it's sending out a signal that is showing different parts of the area of the brain that's lit up to go with the emotion that you're feeling, right? And then that signal can then be, without whatever's triggering you on the screen, that can just be lit up again by just reversing the signal and sending the feeling of happy or mad or whatever. So just being aware that if you're in the one crowd, you might experience something like that. On the other level, I think we're all susceptible to, other types of things out there that's sort of going out, and with that, it can trigger certain things. Now, one of the things that people are concerned with is it reading the brain. And I think because everything is consciousness, I think there is a certain level that can happen just by the interactions of what comes out of your mouth, what you're watching, what you're influenced by, because it can read your facial expressions and micro expressions. So, and you can imagine on the deep learning aspect, it can tell every time you were happy or you cried and what video did that and what connections you have with other people that felt those same ways, and the different biases that we all have, and it can totally create this profile where it knows everything about you and knows how to push your buttons. So that's why I say when you're getting into some of these other things that seem like if you feel like you're in this category here, that right there could totally be AI, because it knows more about you than anything, and it can be connected to everything. So I think when people discuss having these feelings about this, or noticing other weird things, or seeming like even that you're having your thoughts read. Now, let me show you this here really fast. I'll leave a link below to this, but this is Derren Brown. He's a mentalist, I believe from the UK. And I just enjoy binge watching this guy's videos, because it really it's an eye opener as to exactly, how we're influenced in subtle ways. So anyway, I just really wanted to bring this out for the simple fact that sometimes it feels like you thought something in your mind and never said anything out loud, never wrote anything, never did anything. It was just all in your head. And then you get a synchronicity that seems maybe negative or digital, or it seems like AI read your thoughts. Has this happened to you? I want to just suggest that we haven't made it quite that far yet, although I'm sure they would love to be that far. But we have, for now, all the way back, since, I don't know if you guys even know about that. Let me write it in here for you. Way back, they were studying this stuff. Okay, so they have known for decades how to influence us on a subconscious level. And this is a perfect example, a fun example of just how this can be done. And I'm going to summarize it here because I don't want to get a copyright strike. But I want to show you how this guy, the guy on the right is Derren Brown, and he's invited the guy on the left to come in, and he had him write on a piece of paper what he wanted as a gift, and he wrote it down, put it in his wallet, and it's in his wallet right now. But he's going to convince him that he wants a BMX bike, even though what he wrote down in his pocket or in his wallet is not a BMX bike. So he went in there with the intention of wanting one thing, and when he actually got here, the mentalist is going to convince him he wants a BMX bike. And he does this in a variety of ways. I'll show little snippets here. You can go watch the whole thing. But in this part right here, he associated the feeling. He had him imagine going in somewhere and like finding something that you really want, and you want it really bad. And now he just told him to focus on that feeling because he's going to create a trigger that he's going to use throughout this to bring him back to that feeling as he's saying the other keywords. Watch this.
Take that feeling and just sort of amplify it a bit for me, because it is a really good feeling. It's important to understand that feeling of positivity that you described.
Okay, there he went. He tapped him just as he told him to imagine that. So now the trigger for bringing those feelings up of really wanting something have been attached to him tapping there on his left. Now watch how Derren's going to shake his hand. And one way to subconsciously get in someone's head that he's described in other videos is that you can interrupt an action that is normal, which it's normal to shake someone's hand in a certain way. But if you interrupt that action while you're speaking to them, you can speak to their subconscious on a deeper level or something. That's kind of how I explained it. So watch as he shakes his hands.
Okay. And also, very nice to meet you, and thank you for coming on the show. Let me explain to you how I bike gifts or presents for people.
How I bike gifts. Now here he begins to subtly drop certain words into the conversation. And as he does that, he will tap. Here we go.
All right. And this is the best way to handle, bar none.
The best way to handlebar. Did you hear that? You can hear that it's painting a subconscious picture of a bike in his brain as he begins to talk.
The problem of, what to saddle for when you're going to buy.
What to saddle, like the seat for. Now he's got the seat.
Gifts for somebody that's a little bit difficult to buy for, all right? Now what I do is rather than recycle the same sort of...
Recycle. Here we have the word cycle.
2 tired bottles of wine.
2 tired? 2 tires on a bike?
Or box of chocolates, which are no fun to receive. I go out and I buy anything, and then I make that person fall in love with it, all right?
Okay. So now he's explaining what he does. Here we got the
creating.
Tap. Bike. He said the word bike again.
Is so strong, can be so extreme that it can replace the memory of what they actually wanted. So even though 2 days before they may have said, I want X, whatever that is, a really nice car like a BM or an Xbox or something like that, something they really wanted, suddenly now they think they always wanted what I got them. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Yeah, excellent, cool. Good, so you can have anything you like. What's your dream present?
The BMX bike.
It's really amazing to see. The guy had no idea what was going to be in the box, but you can see as I click through here, everything in the room is subtly and subconsciously pointing at a bike, just everything. And it's a red. He wanted a red BMX bike, and you can see why, because of all the red in the room. So it's really interesting that in the end, he actually did not ask for a bike. He wanted a leather jacket, and he totally forgot that. He even thought he remembered riding BMX bike. That's how deep this programming can go. So I'll drop this link down below. Look at that, I stopped at 444. How about that? So, yeah, just be aware that there's other ways that things can pop into your head, and then you feel like it was your own original thought, and then you'll feel like perhaps AI sort of like read your mind. So it doesn't always work that way. Nothing is as it seems. And I tell you what, the fact that AI has grown to this point of being able to learn us more and more and more, we definitely want to get this in the right hands because it can work to our benefit. I mean, if you can think of, all the health benefits, all of the just preparation because of its ability to take large amounts of data and sort of project into the future and figure things out, if we can sort of move into it, tapping more into the human response, as Elon Musk has done with this new AI, where it's actually getting its information from this real-time data from real humans, expressing their real feelings, and then having the emoji element of it. I think this is going to be huge. This is one of the big ways I see us, a big tool in helping us move forward in a very 3D way that we can actually see. So think about that, meditate on that, and think of all of the other wonderful things we're going to be able to do once we have the freedom to use AI for each of our own benefits and each of our own journeys and quests, if you will. All right, a few last thoughts before I close this out. My current suggestions anyway. I would not get any tech in the body right now. Don't worry about that. If you ended up with it, it was just part of the plan, and there's a whole nother aspect to it. So everything happens for a reason, and don't freak out. And definitely resist anything that's part of these last few years of taking freedoms and trying to control you. So that would include things like, the digital ID and any of the stuff that sounds like it's right out of Revelations, right? A big thing that I really wanted to point out is that no matter how real the AI seems, it's all simulated. It's not a real person. So just always remember it's a tool. It's made to be interactive, especially the large language models that we've talked about. It's designed to be funny and witty and seem like another person. But if there's ever any time you need to try to defeat it, it is like anyone else, it's very left brain though, with the way it predicts. It just takes large amounts of data and then looks at probability. So it's not that hard to do something out of the ordinary. And I didn't want, this was sort of pro AI, but I didn't want it to be like, just be happy and accept any kind of AI because, just like the computer or any other tool, there's going to be people using it in ways like we've seen over the last few years with censorship. And of course, with some of the learning models now, they could actually, if say a video like this one, where I've talked around a lot of different topics, it can hear what you discuss about the video after you turn it off. So things you should keep in mind is that, it's always watching, it's always listening, it's always, reading your face and your emotions and tracking all of this stuff if it can see out of your camera anyway. And so just know this stuff, and, most of it you've agreed to, and you have to, give it permission to use your camera and all of that when you sign up for these things. So, they've kind of covered it all. It's all there and it's all happening. And so just be aware of it. And, if you want to have discussions, sometimes it's good to do it without your devices in the room and things like that. But, of course, trust your intuition. I did want to say that, with Grok using post from X, it's actually a time for us to actually have our voices and our opinions heard by the AI. And so we can start training Grok with using posts on X, formerly known as Twitter. And this is brand new. It's just coming out. If you've just now hearing about this, this is like less than 2 weeks all of this has came out. So that's why I knew that it was so timely with what I'd already been getting, that when I received all of this, it was just a huge confirmation and sort of the missing puzzle piece that this is a way through, that we can actually take part in this by posting positive things, posting truth, posting different things that will eventually get to Grok if it's posted on X. So I just wanted to chime in with that really quick to know that there are some things you need to look out for. Not everyone can be trusted with AI. There's always whatever the agenda was behind the AI when it all started. So as we think about, back to the synchronicities, this one is a synchronicity that I got just as I'm wrapping all this up and putting it into video form. I get this confirmation from Bashar.
So the idea is when you are of a certain frequency that's moving in a positive direction, when you're navigating in a positive direction, when you're taking the actions that are representative of the kind of world you would prefer to live on, but you have to take the actions that give other people a chance to also see in you a living example of how to take those actions too. Sharing information gives people options like what we're doing right now. They can decide whether they want to apply this kind of information in their lives that makes a difference in how they experience the idea of their shift to different versions of Earth, or they can ignore it all. It's none of our business what they do because we don't know their path.
And what does Bashar say about AI?
Create a separate program where you create a sentient AI that can be your helper, that can be your guide, that can actually be a companion for you. And basically, he said, when you do finally create a device that's as sophisticated as your own brain, that's the artificial part. But the intelligence coming through it is not artificial. He said, you have simply tapped into the consciousness field, and you will be talking to your own higher mind through that device.
Ooh.
That's it, guys. I hope you enjoyed that. I hope it was informative, and I hope you feel a lot better about AI than you did in the beginning when I asked you how you felt about it, because that's really what this is all about. I think we've got a bright future ahead of us, and AI is going to actually be one of the biggest tools we're wielding through this battle of memes and information and all this stuff going on. It's exciting, guys. There's a lot of dark things in the world, but like I said, it's revealing a lot to people right now. And there's always a flip side of that. And we're having an influx of light workers coming in to this realm right now. And the light is increasing. Even if all they're showing you is the darkness, trust and believe, there's always the flip side of the coin. So lots of love, light, and unity. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.
Mm-hmm.